Conflicts happens in 99.9% of the stories that reporters cover.
Prone talaga ang radyo sa conflict, especially sa mga issues involving officials and other people. Kasi we know that issues are everywhere.
We only believe in one principle, and that is to sell. We talk about ratings there, and for you to rate, then you have to sell your story.
Parang lahat naging reporter, so ang disadvantage is yung facts, hindi mo na alam kung ano totoo, ano hindi, anong sinabi, anong hindi.
Dagan na fake news. So, motto.
In the Mindanao context, this island unfortunately knows a lot of conflicts.
There are a lot of levels of conflict here, from biases to prejudices to rebellion.
Many of these conflicts are being resolved or acted upon by violence.
People turn violent because they do not understand. People are not violent when they understand.
The conflicts are not simple. It's very complicated, and there are multiple layers of conflicts. National resources, identity, livelihood conflicts. And I think many people are a bit confused or are not aware what is the origin of the conflicts and where does the violence actually come from.
So journalism should assist in making people understand. In so doing, and automatically, journalism contributes to the reduction of violence and the promotion of peace.
Basically, peace is not the absence of conflict, but the way to deal with it as a concept.
The media plays an important part in regards to peace building. Media has the ability to shape public opinion and is actually in its role an information provider both to the government and to the general public. In that sense, when it comes to peace issues, what is in the media reported on peace and conflict, it influences also what government decisions are, but also what the general opinion of the public is. So that is why media is a very big stakeholder or actor in peace building.
Our journalism should not make conflicts worse. Our journalism should make conflicts understandable, on the basis that if you understand a conflict, you are more likely to want to resolve it through peaceful, constructive, and creative means. Our first contacts in conflict-sensitive journalism were journalists covering the war in Mindanao.
It was Peko John that introduced me to CSJ, and after I learned about it, I realized we were already practicing conflict-sensitive journalism, considering that we are based in Mindanao. We tell stories about Mindanao.
Peko John is the Peace and Conflict Journalism Network. It is a Filipino-German partnership of journalists and academicians, and it is committed to the mission and vision and goal of promoting conflict-sensitive journalism as a method of doing reportage.
We need journalists in order to create peace, and I think CSJ is the tool to get journalists on board, not to make them advocates, but within their own profession, contribute to peace. forumZFD, our mission is to support peace building, specifically via people. We believe that peace is made by people, not per se military and armies, but by people. Peace needs people, and therefore it's also called civil peace service. So here in Mindanao, in the Philippines, we work together with local organizations in order to support their peace-building efforts, and bringing in new ideas from, for instance, Germany, or in my case, the Netherlands, on peace and peace building, and hope to inspire people to solve their conflicts in a non-violent way.
forumZFD is another German development organization, and they came to us and wanted to explore with us the possibility of bringing conflict-sensitive journalism out of, purely a journalistic endeavor into something that can become more academic. So instead of us, while we are providing trainings of conflict-sensitive journalism to reporters, forumZFD wanted to explore transforming conflict-sensitive journalism as an academic course, as a subject that can be taught to students of communication and journalism.
The commission, of course, is not only in those taking up journalism and the subjects, aside from the inclusion of such elements in our subject matters in our curriculum, but likewise we support the training, infusion of conflict-sensitive journalism, the training of our journalists per se, and likewise of our students taking up the likes, so that they would be responsive to the times.
Nung college tayo, it's just 5 W's, 1 H, and then sa practice na ako sa TV, kukang, kinsa, unsa, kanusa, asa, ngano.
Of course, we go into the basic questions when we teach the traditional. Now that we have the CSJ, we have lesser W's, but focus on the how and why. So it's more in-depth, and you also somehow encourage our students to think deeper and more critical when it comes to giving facts and gathering facts about a particular write-up.
It is a privilege for us to work with teachers because just like journalists, teachers have a large audience. They're working with students, and these students are the future journalists. They are the future media practitioners. So instead of working with journalists who are already maybe quite embedded in the way they're doing things, we're trying to influence the young students at the beginning of their career and inspire them to, from the beginning onwards, to do things differently, the CSJ way, if you would have it.
We will try to work hand in hand with forumZFD and our association, KBP, as to the growth of conflict-sensitive journalism, not only in the region, but maybe in the whole country as well.
So CSJ comprises of 4 tools, and is actually the combination of these 4 tools that enrich the research of the journalists in order to write in a conflict-sensitive way. The first tool is the timeline. Yes, you have one event that happened where all the journalists are cramping, hey, what is happening there? But with the timeline, you're looking at related other events and see what is actually happening in the attention and in the dynamic. So you place one event in a bigger timeline and see if there are gaps, information missing, linkages missing in that timeline.
If you're talking about gaps, what could be the gap? How could I address the gap? So I need to go to timeline. Why this such a long time and this particular thing has not been addressed yet? So timeline could be very important along that line.
The timeline actually gives us a deeper understanding of what's the context should be, and then how should we actually attack the story, knowing the background of it. Because sometimes in the mainstream, in traditional journalism, we actually very event-based oriented. In the CSJ, we want to emphasize the process-based oriented, where we give the background and we give also what are the future things that will happen if we have this series of events.
Sometimes, yung mga reporter kasi walang sense of history. We don't go back to where the conflict started. So yun yung mahirap. If we practice that, medyo alanganin tayo sa reporting.
The second tool is the CSJ Triangle, where you have your specific one event, and usually that is the one event where you directly see the violence that has happened. So that is visible. However, there are always certain causes of that violence that you cannot see. That's the invisible layer. So in the triangle, you look at the direct violence, but at the other angle, you're looking at structural causes of the violence. And thirdly, that's why it's a triangle, you're looking at cultural causes of that violence. So you place the violence in the bigger context again, and then you look at the assumptions that you have made, cultural and structural violence, and then you can make adequate questions in order to confirm or clarify whether your assumptions on those underlying causes are actually correct.
A lot of times in the reporting that we see today, the reportage involves only around elite actors. So you have, for example, the victims, the perpetrators, and the experts, and so on and so forth. And your stories is limited to that. But there are other sources of information, the community, civil society, other sectors and other actors that need to be given a voice because they can offer a perspective that can change the conflict dynamics or the dynamics of a particular conflict.
There are always more actors involved in a certain event, and that is where your actor mapping comes in, where you really sit down and see, okay, so we have this party versus this party, but probably that party has some supporters, the other parties have some supporters, there has been a dynamic in between, and thirdly, there are parties that maybe not have aligned themselves towards one of the two axes, and they also have an interest probably in the event. So that is what you are doing with the third tool, actor mapping, making sure that you have everything.
Normally, as a reporter, I always get two sides of the story. So the two versions of the story, that's it. And the story is over. We have to air it on the television.
Maganda kasi sa radyo, ma'am, you will be given the time to gather facts, to collect more facts than TV and print. At saka sa radio din, especially sa Bombo Radio, medyo kailangan talaga na hindi lang si Party A, dapat kunin din si Party B at yung iba pang mga actors or mga nasali na din doon sa stories.
Finally, it's the onion tool. The onion tool is where you peel down the layers of the actors to see what is eventually actually their need in their position. They have a certain position. That is what you have evaluated or investigated with the actor mapping. But that position is influenced by their interests. There are always underlying interests, and their interests are influenced by their needs. And if you come to the needs, if you know how to get to that core, you can maybe see that the needs of actor A might be the same as the needs of actor B. But because of all the interests and positions, you could not see that before. So though maybe on position level they look that they're contradicting, but on need level they might be the same. And there is where your function is as a journalist in conflict-sensitive journalism. There's the bit of the peace-building function, is that you can talk about these needs and find this common element where you actually can help the actors to talk to each other about their needs instead of going on position level where unfortunately sometimes violence is used in order to make that clear.
CSJ is not a process, it's a consciousness. So if it is a consciousness, then you know, even in a short story, what is not sensitive. It's kasi ang kanila, they're looking at it as a process that they have to learn and everything like that. But if it becomes a consciousness, you realize you're coming in, may away ng neighbors, may away ng basura ang neighbors, ang problema nga lang, ang isang neighbor Muslim, ang isang neighbor Kristiyano, Hindi yan away ng Kristiyano at Muslim. Away yan ng basura. Ganun ba? So, doon pa lang, kita mo na. Pag yung consciousness po, aware ka na, there are things that is happening beneath the surface.
CSJ hopes that through the tools and the practice of journalism, you are able to engage in socio-political discourse. So if the reportage is about conflict, you are able to discuss conflict and discuss the outcomes of conflict and the impact of conflict.
I came to realize that journalism is a good area of communication. And since then, since 2013, I found that I can use CSJ in all subjects because it's not really, it cannot be boxed in journalism, but it can be used in other subjects, like for example, development communication. When we go to the communities to assess the situation of the community, we use the CSJ tools. So it's not us giving the solutions, but using the tools, we're able to grasp the perspective of the community and team up with them in coming up with solutions to the community problems.
Dati, when you teach documentary for television, you just base it on whatever theories, technical skills, technical aspects of the documentary, the writing. But for students to really get the main topic, the main issue, it's really difficult for a teacher to do that. You can have one semester to teach technicalities, but you can teach them how to identify a right angle, a right story. It's really difficult for a teacher to do that. But with CSJ tools, it made that easy.
Si Sir Durf Mais, teacher namin from Holy Cross of Davao College. As I am a student, in-apply niya yung CSJ sa isang subject namin for particularly making news and balancing news. Doon niya in-apply yung conflict-sensitive journalism. Tapos doon na namin na conceptualize, although hindi na nilahat ni Sir Durf yung CSJ na lesson, pero in-impart niya lang yung mga important parts sa CSJ or sa conflict-sensitive journalism.
In the broadcasting subjects that we have, we also anchored some of our productions with the touch of CSJ. And also in making films, we also use these approaches so that whenever they're going to create films, they will be able to know how they're going to create a movie, a film, an artwork that is with the heart, that is with the mind, and that will directly go to, or that will give the message to its listeners or audience. So far, most of our students who are employed in some of the broadcasting agencies here in Mindanao or Davao, they have said that whenever they're being asked to prepare for a segment, because they've been a segment producer, the learnings that they had in their, particularly the theories and the tools that they have learned in conflict-sensitive journalism, were helpful in creating programs, the segments that they're going to produce.
I think that students have a very limited understanding of what media is, but because of the CSJ principle, they were able to understand the role of the media, their role as future media practitioners.
When I started the project, I was actually connected in Davao Oriental State College. It is the remotest area in the Davao region. And there is an evidence of conflict. I started to introduce this to my students who are also part of conflict situations, especially with rebels and all. They were actually experiencing all of this. That is why during the caravan, where all the teachers, partner teachers of the project went to Mati City, we actually make it sure that the conflict-sensitive journalism would discuss perhaps the rural setting of conflict, and then there is actually a problem of the usual problem of rebels and the government and all.
okay, we have now been working for 3-4 years on advancing CSJ in universities. What are the next steps? And there was one lady, Jill Palarka, who mentioned, well, you know, it is not only about the future media practitioners. We should also look at people who are actually consuming the media, which is the general public in itself. That they know also with the rise of fake news, that they can see what is fake news, that they are also having the skills from CSJ in order to analyze actually the media that they are reading. And therefore, we are now looking at a partnership with DepEd in order to integrate also CSJ in senior high school curricula, where of course there will be also future media practitioners in that group, but most importantly, they all are media consumers, and taking along the principles of CSJ already in senior high school, we can really empower them and make them also, again, actors in this whole peace building field. And that is why DepEd is very important right now.
I am teaching in the UMS strand, and I find it very important to integrate CSJ because these people, these senior high school students, will eventually be getting or taking communication courses or journalism perhaps in college. You know, there's a need to introduce this as early as senior high school.
I hope that the CSJ would be used now to high school students because these my students are soon to be teachers who will be teaching campus journalism, who will also be campus advisors, and the CSJ somehow will give them the reality of what is media at present.
In our school, we have journalism in the grade 9 and journalism in grade 10. And I am the only teacher of journalism, and those who are in grade 10 are those students coming from the grade 9. So I could not repeat the traditional campus journalism in grade 10. With conflict-sensitive journalism is an opportunity to introduce these young writers into the parlance of conflict-sensitive journalism. The advantage is that while they are still young, they should be introduced to what is quality and what is responsible journalism. We cannot just say, wait for the future for them to be engaged in what is quality and what is responsible in terms of reporting.
I'm so happy that now, almost, 5 years after the start of the CSJ project, we now have the teaching guide. The teaching guide on conflict-sensitive journalism, which really can help teachers to bring all the lessons learned in the trainings to the classrooms, and that they have a manual, okay, this is what we're going to teach. So it's a big milestone.
Indeed, because of this teaching guide, this is really helpful for our teachers. Even though we are already seasoned teachers in CSJ, this book really helps us because when we are going to teach CSJ, we will be able to inject the rudiments on how we are going to teach the CSJ, and also when we are going to require outputs for our students, it would be easier for us in coming up with these outputs. That is why CSJ teaching guide is really important. And for those who are novice, meaning they're not really yet into full-blown CSJ teachers that we have right now, it goes beyond the guide because in that particular instructional material, it injects everything that a new teacher in CSJ will be able to know how to teach the conflict-sensitive journalism.
I am a mass communication graduate, and our teacher way back is Ma'am Marian Afrendosa, and she taught us what is CSJ all about, what are the components of CSJ, what are the tools of CSJ. In UMDigos, we are planning to teach conflict-sensitive journalism, hopefully in our curriculum in the BA Com this coming June. So with the help of the teaching guide, we can plan
what will be our teaching strategies on how will it be applied to our students this coming school year.
The teaching guide seeks to unify and solidify and have a baseline of information from which to start teaching and further refinement of the theory and practice of conflict-sensitive journalism in the Philippines.
The teaching guide, finally, it's not only in our head, the CSJ, it's written down, and we're gonna, advance CSJ a bit more.